You can actually design your career. And but a lot of people don't do it. They stay on the thing that they thought they were supposed to do. So
welcome to this episode of the podcast, where we explore a journey from sales to the fascinating world of physics. Today we have an extraordinary guest, Erin Healy, who began her journey in science at the age of 25 after a diverse and winding path that included lacrosse, pre-med ambitions, and a lot of soul-searching. Now, she is a postdoctoral researcher at the Kavli Institute for Cosmological Physics. In this episode, we discuss the importance of finding your true calling, knowing when to quit and when to persevere. This episode is packed with insights on balancing career ambitions with personal growth and curiosity. Our guest started her academic journey pursuing pre-med, thinking that anyone passionate about STEM should go into medicine. However, she later discovered her true interest in physics. Despite being told she didn't have enough calculus background to switch, she was determined to follow her new path. We'll explore her journey of trying out various fields, starting with earning a degree in classics from the University of Pennsylvania, moving into sales, and then realizing her interest in science. She returned to U-Penn to take physics classes, eventually pursuing and completing a PhD in cosmology at Princeton. We discuss her experiences at U-Penn, her post-baccalaureate program, and the exciting realm of cosmology research at Princeton. You'll hear about her day-to-day life as a researcher, her work at Princeton, and what she plans to do at the Kavli Institute for Cosmological Physics and the Simons Observatory. Join us as we nerd out on cosmology, explore the cosmic microwave background, and discuss the importance of finding your calling, knowing when to quit and when to persevere. Let's dive in. So, Erin, do you want to start by giving us a quick introduction of yourself?
yeah, well, Brad, thank you so much for having me here. I think it's very cool what you're trying to do. And I hope to get the word out about how to do things like what I do. So who am I? I am a experimental cosmologist. So I research the early universe and specifically the earliest light in the universe that we can see. And I didn't always do that. I tried a lot of other things first. And I started studying physics when I was 25. And so I still feel kind of new at it. But given all the other experiences I had before, even the ones that had nothing to do with physics, like when I was in sales or worked in a high school, that somehow still can connect as long as you're trying to get something out of your experiences. So that's kind of my story, is how I've learned in all sorts of different ways and how that got me to where I am now.
Yeah, so I think you have probably one of the coolest backgrounds as a grad student in our department. So I really want to get into this. And I think a good starting point is high school. So can you tell me what type of high school did you go to? Did you think it was a good one? What was it like?
Homogenous. It was homogenous. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, mostly. And it was a good, cute little colonial town with a lot of lawyers and doctors. And so, the education system was pretty good. I went to a public school, and I always felt like I had good opportunities. But there were still a lot of people going to private schools, and that was a decision to make in high school. So I right away, when the first decision I had to make in terms of my career probably was when I was in 8th grade, of do I want to go to this public school or do I want to go to private school? And at the time, I wasn't thinking about the money, but of course that is a factor for lots of people and should be. Fortunately, I had other factors that saved my parents a bunch of money anyway. But a big thing for me was actually sports. I played field hockey for a while, and I was really serious about it. And I really wanted to be part of the high school team. That mattered to me. And so and my friends. So I kind of made the personal decision of I'm not gonna try to be so intense. I'm just gonna try to be, do normal stuff and be a normal kid and not grow up too fast. So that was kind of the first decision, and then it kept me sheltered for a while, so that was fine. But
Sheltered from what?
Well, I was still in my same small town. I met
Okay.
only people who grew up in that small town. I realize
Yeah.
now if you go somewhere else, you might get to meet different types of people sooner. So it wasn't until like college that I really started, and going to summer camps, that I started meeting diverse sets of people whose parents weren't from Massachusetts,
Yeah.
people who had seen other parts of the country, the world. So, yeah. So, and in high school is when I started traveling too. I took some pretty eye-opening trips to Europe, to China, and that expanded what I thought, what life could be like. It was.
Were these like school trips or just family vacation
One
trips?
was, yeah, I went to China with a bunch of classmates. There were 14 of us that spent 2 weeks there.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, we did a homestay in a city called Yangzhou, and that was a really foundational experience to get out. First trip away from home, and it was the furthest place I could go.
Yeah.
and yeah, and I was with some really arty kids that really wanted to think about what stage they were at life. So we sat in gardens and wrote diary entries
Uh-huh.
and tried to contemplate our what was going on with our bodies and brains at 16.
Yeah.
And
Were you thinking like about what was going on in your life before then?
I was just on a track, just going through the motions.
Mhm.
I thought I was supposed to be good at school, sports, music. I just did all the things I thought I was supposed to do.
Mhm.
And it was then when I started trying to get some perspective, try to reflect on what I was doing and why.
Yeah.
And I think that's when my goals started to change, and I started orienting myself in different ways of what I might want to do with my mind, with my body, with what can I do
Mhm.
that's not just school. So
Yeah. But speaking about this track of doing good in school and music and extracurricular activities, how good do you think you were in comparison to your school? Yeah, like were you the
Yeah.
best in your school? What do you think that was like?
I was definitely a huge nerd, so I cared about doing well in school.
Yeah.
And I took all honors, every AP that was offered. And I knew starting at the beginning of high school that I was really into STEM.
Okay.
So by senior year, I was taking like 3 science courses because that was an option. So I was always really competitive. Yeah, I was doing like chemistry Olympiads and
Oh, wow.
nerd about math, and so I was pretty
Yeah.
serious about math and science for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I went to a really the high school did a good job of protecting us from ourselves. We didn't have class rank, we didn't have prom queen, we didn't have anything that
Mhm.
would have people attacking each other. And so I don't really know where I stood,
Yeah.
which is great. I was good enough, but I don't really know.
I see.
I was surrounded by smart people, it felt like, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. So in your high school, what if you weren't ranked, then when you applied for undergrad colleges, how did you know which ones you stood a chance of getting into? Did you look at the people above you and see where they went, and where did your peers go to also?
Yeah, I started my search a similar way that I started my high school search of sports first.
Okay.
I, at the time, thought that I would that would help me get into the best school. If I was competitive with the sport, then I could get into a good school. But then, as it turned out, it didn't really make a difference. But that's how I started looking, is what schools are the highest academic level that I could be at while also playing a sport. And so the first place to look was the Ivy League, because the sports are slightly less intense. Still
Uh-huh.
Division I, but slightly less intense.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody who's an Ivy League athlete, you're really it's hard work, I know, but it's less than a lot of the other stuff. So anyway, and yeah, so that was like my starting criteria, and I thought I wanted to be at a school like I ended up going to grad school. I thought I wanted to be at a like small liberal arts campus, maybe tucked away, get really into academics, and then I visited Philadelphia to see if I liked the University of Pennsylvania, and I had a really amazing experience, and then I wanted to be in a city. And that was the school I ended up going early decision with.
Oh, okay.
It had I had the same sort of academic mindset that I was looking for, of that people were here to be serious. They knew that they had 4 years to kind of use the education, but it was plugged into a city, and it wasn't remote. It was you were going to learn a lot, not just in school. So get exposed to much more than just academics. So that ended up being a big criteria, somewhere that I could, I grew up in a small town. So it was kind of time to meet different types of people in different ways.
Yeah, I see. What did you want to be in high school?
A doctor
Okay.
of medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is the only type of doctor I probably knew about at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
that was, if you liked science, that was what you did. You liked science, and I liked people. And it seemed like that was the intersection that made sense. So I ended up, like I said, taking lots of science courses in high school, and then I also went to a med camp, which was really helpful for me to get a window into what it might be like to be a doctor. It was like a 2-week on campus at a school in Boston, and you had like ethics sessions. You had gave sutures to a banana practice sort of medical stuff, and did visit hospitals and talk to lots of people in the field. And so it really gave me a window into what it might be like to be that profession. And I was really into it, and that had me really motivated. And then when I got to college and I started taking the pre-med courses, I realized that the pathway where the people that I was talking to back then were way further along than I was. I had 10 years of other stuff to do first, med school, residency, specialty, all of that. And I hadn't considered whether or not I wanted to do all of those other steps. I saw the end looked great. And it goes back to that like marshmallow psychology test of, do the kids who wait 15 minutes, can they have, so actually if there's a younger audience, maybe they haven't heard this psychology experiment, but and someone should look it up, or Brad, you can like add it, you can cite me or something in the notes, because I might mess it up. But if you give a kid, put a kid in a room and you put a marshmallow in front of them and you say you can eat it now or you can wait 15 minutes, and then you can have 2 marshmallows. Then whoever did the study, they followed up for a while. And they said, how did these kids turn out? Who ended up, what about the kids who ate the marshmallow and didn't? And there was some predictive, there's some prediction that he was able to make. If you ate the marshmallow, that meant, he theorized, or other people did, that you couldn't wait for the delayed gratification. You had to, you weren't going to be able to do things like I'm describing. Go to med school for 10 years because you can't wait for the 2 marshmallows at the end. You need a marshmallow now, and then you'll have another one in 15 minutes. And I'm a marshmallow now and in 15 minutes. I don't need 2 in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll just have them every 15. Maybe you only got 1, and that was the downside. But as I said, I should reread the study. But yeah, it was too delayed gratification. I didn't know for sure that I could do every step. And the first biology course I took that was probably intended to weed us out successfully got me readjusted. And I thought, I had never gotten a C before. I was a really, really good student. And I showed up and I started getting C's my first semester in biology, the field that I should have been exceptional at. And so it was I at that point put on a different mindset because I was an athlete too, that I had to just buck up and like keep going.
Yeah.
And I had a plan and it was going to work out. So I just had to stick to the plan.
Yeah.
And it took me years to realize that I really should have considered alternate plans. But this is the story of me. I
Yeah.
really have to learn a mistake
Yeah.
very viscerally. It doesn't happen unless I really mess up. So
Yeah.
it's a fast way to
But
learn. But
why do you say you were an athlete also and you took the idea that you need to buck up? Because
yeah.
I personally noticed that this is a sort of, I think, like an athlete mindset where it's like discipline and hard work. In like sports, it's like usually pretty correlated until you hit like this level where there's some physiological limitation or something. Oh, yeah, but
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
they'll
know.
have you convinced it's linear, that it doesn't stop. If you
Yeah,
just keep working harder, it'll just
yeah,
keep going up. That's yeah, there's no plateauing in a lot of the
yeah.
mentality. Yeah, I
But
mean,
also, you
especially
don't
at
want
the
to give up too soon, right? How do you know when you're not giving up too soon? And I don't know.
I
Uh,
just read a headline the other day
yeah.
about how the secret to winning is quitting.
Oh,
'Cause
okay, okay.
you
Yeah. So
quit when you quit because you're not good at something, and you just keep trying things until you find something you're good at, and
interesting.
then you're winning.
Okay, okay.
So
Let me stop interrupting you and tell
no,
me what you were gonna say. Yeah.
yeah, no, I have so many. I have so many thoughts, but yeah, failing fast is sort of a good message to take away from a lot of this. Is like make a mistake, listen to the feedback. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because you'll learn a lot faster than if you just hold it in and say no, I'll be fine. This will work out. It's going to take a lot longer to figure that out. So yeah, for college sports, especially college sports, but also like at all levels, you have these coaches that are their career. They do it their whole lives, and you have people that come in and out, and they're using their bodies and minds to work really hard. And if you're a coach, you have it's all about motivating these people to work really hard. And so there's lots of different approaches. Just like our advisors in grad school or bosses in work will have all these. Hopefully, will have a coherent approach. They will have thought about how they're treating their employees, and that's what it was. We were employees, and the sort of the norm is to instill that, like, don't give up, keep working harder, it's going to pay off. And that was really hard to do right away when I was in college because I moved out of my home. I was living in a big city for the first time. I was going as an aside, our field hockey field was really bad, so
Oh
most of our
no.
games were away. No
Uh
one
huh.
wanted to play on our field, so we had to travel. So I was traveling like 3 days a week. We'd leave Friday, come back Sunday. And I had lectures on Friday, so I was missing like a third of my classes,
Mm.
the ones that met Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So it was like so much all at once, and I had no that you were the my high school experience was supposed to prepare me for that. I had all these. Look, I did sports. I did. I was good at academics, but I also had my full family structure. I had. It was a familiar place. There were not all these other outside factors that I really then had to adjust to,
Mhm.
and I did a bad job adjusting right away. But that's normal, and you get through it. But it was tough. The first semester, I had a lot of self doubt. I was really concerned that this was my new future. This was the new normal. I went to a school that was too competitive, and I wasn't gonna cut it. I was not gonna make it. So that was the tough start of college that really set me on a specific path, like I said, of bunkering down and saying, no, I have a good plan. It's gonna pay off. I'm gonna wait for that marshmallow,
Mhm.
and then I kept going, and that was um, good and bad. Like I said at the beginning of you just have to try to keep learning something, even when you know you're in a bad situation. Figure out what it is that you can learn from it. So. I learned how to work with people on that team. I learned a lot about people. I was in a room with like the same 20 girls 6 days a week. And
Yeah.
it was really up close and personal. And that had a lot of benefits as well. So even though I do things differently with the hindsight, it's not obvious that I'd end up learning the same things if I did it differently. So I don't
Mhm.
want to sacrifice that. I can't change that.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think there's anything you could have done differently to sort of make that transition to undergrad easier? Because it seems like it was dependent on the factors in high school, what you were exposed to, and then going to U-Penn, and there were so many different conditions just by definition. And was there any way to make that transition easier for people like you?
I think just talking more about what was going on would have been good. Like, I think now there's a lot more discussion about mental health and are you feeling overwhelmed, what to do about it. And I made, instead of having some sort of access to that sort of support, I had access to a team that ended up being supportive. But I think we were all new at it, and that they weren't professionals, and so I think it might have been good to talk more about it. Talk to my parents too. You know, we always have family stuff that makes it hard to open up about these things. I was 18-year-old. I was doing things I wasn't supposed to. So like, could I talk to my parents openly? I didn't have a lot of people. I had an older sister. She was helpful. But yeah, I think not doing the thing of bottling it up and really trying to something I've learned now is to be okay with being in a bad spot. People are like really nice a lot of the time. People will notice when you need help if you make it obvious. And I got there, you know. It was a tough semester, and then I made some good friends in those times, and then they got me through the next few years. But it took me ages to then evaluate what it was I was gonna study, because I was really catching up with proving to myself that I could do things, and that's a mindset that I retired. I've retired that mindset. If I'm not enjoying what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, let's think about like what the goal is.
Yeah. You know, I was wondering with you said you started this biology class and you got a C, and that had a big impact on you. And I was wondering, how much of that do you think had to do with the preparation and background and sports and all of the switch? And also, how much of a factor was it that you were in a class full of pre-meds, and I don't know how many pre-meds also take sports very seriously. How do you think that was a big factor in this, and pushing you away from medicine in general?
I think that there were biology in particular was something that I was not prepared well for, I think. I started laughing when you asked that question because I just thought of my AP bio class, that this poor teacher, like I have a lot of empathy for her now, but at the time I was pretty impatient. She had like a near death experience. She got MRSA, that thing that you're up like she had a infection that was MRSA that infected her blood, and so she nearly died right at the beginning of the semester, at the beginning of the school year. And I didn't appreciate that at all. I did not realize this woman had just been through hell. And she was really checked out that whole year. She really had a tough time. And I don't think that this was because of it. I think that this was actually standard, but one of our tests, instead of learning anything, we all made posters about a phyla. Like I was the squids phyla, Cnidarians. No, that's not right. Oh God, see, I'm bad at biology. It still is true. But we did some mollusks. That's right, we were mollusks, and we all made posters. And then the exam was that everybody brings in binoculars, and during the exam, you just use the binoculars to look at the posters around the room that everybody made. And ours in particular caused a problem because we got it laminated because I was an overachiever, and so it was reflective with the sun, so people couldn't see mollusks. They thought I did that competitively because people thought I was competitive.
I see.
It wasn't. So it was like a weird. That was like very public school. The teacher wasn't paid enough to work as hard as she had to work to get to get all of the AP course material out there. So she just didn't. And I kind of respect her for it. But I wasn't super prepared for AP biology at all, or college level biology at all. And then also it's that thing that we now know well in grads or at the academic institutions of people are paid to be researchers.
Yeah.
And first semester bio is like the people who want to do it will stick with it. If you want to do bio, you'll do it.
Yeah.
The people who are teaching it are probably brilliant researchers, and they're trying to teach it in some interesting way that will attract the people who are already predisposed. I took the honors one. I went with the ones who were the pre-med competitive. This is exactly what I want to do, so I will just soak this up. I found it frustrating and disjointed, and I couldn't wrap my head around it, and so I became defeatist about it.
So after the idea of med school died, what did you want to do after?
It died a slow death. Yeah, I stuck with it for another 3 years.
Really? Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, so after the C in biology, you were just like, I need to work harder.
I waited for a W. I waited for a withdrawal in organic chemistry. I got a lot of other middling grades, but it was good because I stuck with pre-med, which meant I took physics.
Okay.
And
wait, do you want to describe that for the people who don't know what pre-med is? Or I think maybe like what are the pre-med requirements? I think that's like a good thing to say.
Yeah, I pre-med is not really pre-med. It does not really do much med. It is broad science and math. So pre-med undergrad major, and my university actually didn't even have one, which is why I majored in classics, which I think we'll get to soon. But yeah, pre-med was just a list of courses which included like four semesters of biology-ish, 4 semesters of chemistry-ish, including organic chemistry, 2 semesters of physics, 2 semesters of math. And I took both semesters of physics. The only thing I didn't finish is that organic chemistry that I withdrew from. I did all the other things because I kept the option open. I wasn't sure. I didn't feel like I was able to make the decision that I could give up on it yet. I was still thought I might come around. And so I ended up taking physics and really loved it. I actually took physics with who ended up being my future advisor. My first semester of physics was a pre-med physics course that didn't have calculus. So it was like basic physics, mechanics. And a lot of the examples that Mark Devlin would do involved a ballooning telescope that I eventually worked on. So there's a genre of telescopes where you can load them up on what looks like a hot air balloon and launch it into space. And we did a lot of mechanics of then you cut the cord, drop the payload of the telescope, what happens. So we did all these fun telescope problems back then.
These telescopes, you attach them to a hot air balloon and they just go straight into space and then orbit the Earth?
No, sort of. They orbit, but like the one that I worked on orbits in Antarctica, which doesn't really orbit. It just like goes in like a really short circle for like a few weeks. But the tale of Blast is this incredible collaboration that is cursed. There's actually a movie, Blast, the movie about one of the missions that what I just described happened, where they released the payload, they dropped it, and you want your payload to be white, so it doesn't absorb all of the sun energy. Like there's lots of, once you're not protected by the atmosphere, you're going to heat up with all of the radiation in space. And so you paint everything white, and then that fell into the Antarctic snow.
Oh no.
And then the balloon, which is not really a hot air balloon, it's like it is helium balloon or something. But yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. That was not my part of the instrument. And yeah, it got dragged. The balloon the parachute rather, from when it got dropped, acted like a sail, and it dragged the telescope for like many miles. So then it had to be recovered, and the black box with all the information, of course, was indeed white. So that was also hard to find. So it was so this cursed instrument. So then the one that I ended up working on eventually, also it only flew for 12 hours. Because when the telescope was launched and the balloon was released, something got hit, just like a piece of the telescope or a part of the telescope just got knocked and it started spinning and then it spun out of control and then they lost communication 12 hours in
Oh no.
and that one was also ill-fated. So this blast, it's a great collaboration, but it has unfortunately tragic endings a lot of the time. and yeah, so that was when I first got introduced to physics from, again, who would eventually be my advisor, and I loved it. And the second semester was really when it started getting me curious. I had also, I guess, in between first and second semester of physics, I took this philosophy of space and time. Where,
oh man, that sounds amazing.
It was awesome. highly recommend anybody in a college right now, go look up and see if your university has the philosophy of space and time. It's a trip. It's so fun. So it starts with like all these like paradoxes that the Greeks started thinking about that were like, why is anything? They were very existential and mathematical. They were trying to say mathy things, and so they needed to describe space, and so they were the first people that we know of that really tried to describe space. And so and then it went up through Einstein and general relativity, and not super mathematical, but just the history of how space was conceptualized. A big detour at Descartes and Kepler and all those guys. So it was really, that was a really cool course. And then I went on to the second semester of pre-med physics, which is way better than the second semester of major physics, because you get to modern physics. You start to get into optics and special relativity, and I started actually getting into a window of like what's the cool part about physics, not just like what have we known for a few hundred years, but like what's the forefront of physics research. And that got me really curious. I even reached out to the dean or to the department chair and asked if I could, like, is it too late for me to start taking higher level physics courses? And it was apparently, or I'd have to start over because my physics courses didn't have calculus. And so that was a no-no.
Okay. Yeah.
So I retired that dream temporarily. And I had always actually planned on majoring in classics.
Okay.
That was my...
That was part of the pre-med, because the pre-med is like not a degree. So you pick a degree and you just do those requirements.
Yeah, I took a career aptitude test when I was about 16 or 17 years old. Okay. And it was a pie chart that had all the different slices of pie were different industries and professions. And the closer you were to the edge, then the more predisposed to that industry you were. And I got the dead center of the circle. So I've always had like lots of interests and like unable to choose. And so doing the classics was like an opportunity to sort of balance my interests and get a break from all of the math science stuff, which ended up being really helpful when I had a lot of doubt about math and going into pre-med and not really understanding what other options were in science yet. I didn't have a good handle on that. So it was helpful to have something else that I could think about, worry about, and continue to grow and learn from without necessarily it having a destination. I knew I wasn't going to be a classicist, but I figured I could learn a lot from sort of the origin of Western thought.
Yeah. When did you know about classics as a major to study?
I probably learned about it when I was like started doing college tours. People probably mentioned it, and I looked up in college course catalogs, and I had read in my freshman year English class of high school, we had read the Odyssey and Edith Hamilton's Mythology, which are great reads for any nerds out there. And I was this English teacher really impressed something that stuck with me about how we can read this book from millennia ago and connect with it and have find out how similar humanity was 2,000 years ago to now, 3,000 years ago to now. And I loved that notion. I really perseverated on that for a long time. And then when I was 16, I got so lucky when I was 16. I went to China for that trip with a bunch of classmates. And then my cousin was studying abroad in Sicily. So I got to visit her, and I saw Greek temples for the first time. And I got it really got me so excited that I felt so connected, like this cosmic, we're going to get to the cosmos, but it felt kind of cosmic of like this connection to this old time that now it doesn't seem that old, in the whole grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Well, for what you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started thinking about classics when I was in high school. And so I took history of ancient Greece like first semester. I was really into it.
Mm-hmm.
And then stuck with it. I had it, the University of Pennsylvania had a really wonderful classics department. So I had a great time there. And actually, I should bring up somebody who left a really strong impression on me that ended up, I don't even know this woman's name. I need to find her somehow. I took one of the ideas I flirted with when I was quitting pre-med. I took this course on museums. And it was in the archaeology museum on Penn's campus, and we got to the behind the scenes. And this woman who now worked as a curator in a museum had done a zillion jobs. She had tried everything, and she from waitressing, which is something I've also done, from waitressing to education to I think she also did some sort of sales, which we'll get to, like all sorts of things that she just got all this experience. And after all of that, she said, now I found something I love. And that really left an impression. Like if I just keep trying things,
Mm-hmm.
eventually I'll find something I'm passionate about, and it doesn't have to be right away. It can take a while. This woman is proof that it can take a while. And I really identified with her and the way, she found her path. And it was exactly what I needed to hear at that time when I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just
Wait,
said,
what
let's just
stage
start
in
trying
life
things.
was this?
I was a junior in college.
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
So,
uh,
I guess coming down to the end of undergrad, what was your state like, and how did that influence your next step, and what was your next step?
yeah, I panicked. I totally panicked. I had no idea what I
in
wanted to do.
in junior or
Um,
senior year?
I started
Both.
panicking the spring of my junior year, so it was
Okay.
prolonged. Um, it was the first time that I, couldn't see far in the future. I didn't know what I was going to be doing in a year, and it was terrifying. And and so that's when I started to do the thing that I said I should have done at the beginning of college, where I just started talking to people.
Mhm.
I talked to my family members. I started talking to professors, getting ideas about how they got into things. And I have all these resources. I have all these people that I talked to about all sorts of, surface level things. But there was a whole network. I'd been at school for 3.5 years or something, 2.5 years. There's a whole network of people that I could start to talk to, former classmates who did internships. I started actually asking questions instead of just like bunkering down and saying, oh, like I'll just stick with this. I started saying, well, how'd you guys figure this out? What did you do? and that's when I realized, like, I can't curse on this podcast. Shite. I don't know what it is that I want to do. I didn't have anything. I felt like I had nothing that I really, really wanted to do. And so I decided that I would choose based on location. Basically, I'll go somewhere interesting that I can meet people and find something cool to do. So I looked for jobs like in California, Austin, and New York City, and I was like, I'll just try to find something here, and then we'll go from there. And I got a job like so random at a company that was just hiring, needed people. And so I got a job my senior spring after like lots of people had already gotten their jobs, and I was starting to get nervous. And now when I look back, I was still like so early. Getting a job in like March of my senior year was like, that's insane. Like I should have just like waited then. I should have just graduated, taken a few months, found a job. If you have a place you can stay, that's like, it would have been helpful to do that then. But I couldn't imagine, that felt like failing not to have a job. Like I went to college, I had to have a job. That's like the whole point. So I
Yeah.
didn't even consider taking time. And I eventually then did
Okay.
afterwards.
Yeah. Do you think it was hard to get a job? So like graduating from U-Penn opens a lot of doors. But did you think that a classics degree was like advantageous or disadvantageous in the job market? I guess it definitely picked out a sector of the job market.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of I worked in sales for a tech company that they were really looking for people that they could train. Like
Mm-hmm.
I did not have to have a particular skill set, and it's sales, so there is sort of like a natural, like, can you, if you have a conversation, like sometimes you can just tell that person is going to be able to sell things. And that's what I had. My dad's a salesperson. Like I like hate that I'm like so salesy, but I like really am. It's just, I don't know. But it's so my classes degree had nothing to do with that. Also my dad got me the job. I should say nepotism absolutely was a thing. It works, and that's awful for the people who don't have it. But I got lucky. I have a dad that had a job, like it was in an industry that was growing and could hire someone like me. Like you said, that degree is from Penn is like fine. People trust that means you can work hard. And I did sports. I think actually that had a lot to do with like that is a similar sort of, these people can work hard. These people can also be told what to do probably.
Like a signaling that you can do all of these things. Yeah.
And like team player, like you can sort of work for that delayed gratification. You can put in the practice for like the performance, sort of like there's sort of character traits that you might see that in sports, but obviously not limited to sports. But I think that sort of stuff probably factored in way more than the classics. It was like there were other English majors, there were history majors, like humanities people were sort of lumped into a group, and then the other factors of, are you a good fit for the role? Because there were lots of the company was hiring fast. I ended up in sales, but they were also hiring people like me to do data analysis, and that like probably would have been harder with a classics degree, but there were people doing like services, customer service with like classics degrees, literally. So, yeah, it was not. Most people, like, I think that the plurality is more of like lawyers. Like that's a undergrad that does well for law school, but it ended up not being super relevant. Ended up being what it started as kind of a an interest thing, and I just learned a lot about how to analyze probably primary sources, which is a valuable skill that comes back in research. Like it was a research degree, just so different than the type of stuff that I do now. But you still have to think critically of where is this information coming from? Is it reliable? Like, and how do we know this? Like I do stuff now that's similarly looking back in time. How do we know that this is even true? So there was a lot of sort of critical thinking skills that I think helped me more in physics than in sales and in the business world.
What exactly did you do in your sales job?
I worked for a company that we sold ad space. We were like we were like banner ads, like not pop-up ads, not that,
Not
pop-up ads
one.
are like, I mean, banner ads suck too, but no, not just banner ads. We were getting into mobile and video when I was leaving, but yeah, basically so when I showed up, I didn't know anything about technology. Like I didn't, truly nothing. I had technology, but I was a user. I didn't know anything about how technology is built. And then I was selling it like immediately. I was selling technology that I had no conception of what it was doing. But it got me so curious. I loved learning about how complex this was just to serve a banner ad. And I will go into it because even though it's boring, it's just amazing the complexity of the most mundane things. But this company's secret sauce is that as the web page is loading, there's hosting an auction, and there's an auction taking place in the first point some odd seconds while the web page is loading. And so that's really hard technology. It's like super boring now when I think about it. Like, I'm not interested in that technology, but it's powerful and fast. And so that was what I was slinging those days. I was slinging ads, but I was selling to businesses. So it wasn't like there was no consumer. It was your company, we were the technology company selling to other companies that were going to use it. So it was very removed from any practical thing that I could get a hold on. So I was in over my head at the beginning, and I had to really learn fast. And it was a fun challenge. I really actually liked learning how this technology worked. And I moved pretty quickly in this company towards more of a technology type salesperson, because that was just sort of my natural disposition. So in terms of the younger people listening, I feel like the audience might be looking for advice. And as I've been saying about keep doing keep trying to get things out of what you're doing. If you're at a company that the role you're in is not the right thing, see if there's other roles in the company. Try to redefine the role, because that ended up really helping me learn about technology, and that's what I do now, science and technology. But I remember a very important article that I read of why the Hyperloop is not getting funded, but Instagram is. This is way back. I'm old. This is like old, 2014.
I forgot about the Hyperloop.
Yeah. This is back. So yeah, this was, I just persevered on this thought for so long of why. And of course, there's a bunch of like investment banking reasons why, and that's what the article was about. But I didn't care about that. I was trying to get out of the game. I realized that I wanted to, at least if I was gravitating more towards technology, I should be building technology, because I liked that idea. And then if I'm going to be building technology, like, is this really it? I was 24 and I was, had tried a couple things, but I hadn't tried everything. And so it felt like narrowing to just stay in this industry, even though I was doing well and moving through it. Success wasn't meeting with my interests. And so I had the benefit of like my job role changed, and I started liking it less and less, and that gave me the push to say, okay, let's try something new. And but I didn't know what yet, and I finally did the thing that I should have done, which was just quit without a plan. Just do nothing. Get bored.
Did anyone tell you to do this?
I'm sure. But Thoreau, I don't know.
Okay. In my head, I was laughing. I was like, your boss told you to quit.
Well,
I'm just kidding, though.
Sort of. She did. Actually, I should give her some credit there, because I had a meeting with her, and I was like, I really just want to go to Greece for the next week, because I just got invited to go to Greece for a friend who is visiting his family, and I had been a classics major, obsessed with Greece for years, and I'd never been, and now I was gonna could stay with my friend's family for a few days, and my boss said, you should definitely do that. You should definitely go eat the marshmallow. And I did, and then I was at the top of the Corinth castle, the palace structure up in Corinth, looking out over just the gorgeous expanse of the Peloponnese and mainland Greece, and like, I got to do something else. And I quit a few days later. Like that boss did not know what she set in motion.
Yeah.
It was that was the beginning of the end. Then I went to Bonnaroo, the music festival. And I quit right before I went to Bonnaroo, the music festival. And then I spent some time there, and I was like, thank God. That was, so I really like took the time to be confident that I wanted to quit. Like I really made sure I wanted to quit, but I didn't focus on what I wanted to do next. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the criteria. It was just, this is not the right thing.
Yeah.
I don't have to know the next thing yet.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I did that. It took me a while.
Yeah.
So,
so in this period when you quit and you were not doing a job, but this was a stage when you were thinking about what you wanted to do next. What were you doing in this period, and sort of, did you have any sort of tools, or, like, did you go to books, people? What was your framework of moving forward in this period?
No people. At first, no people.
Okay.
I was in sales for 2 years.
Yeah.
I needed no people.
Okay.
I was looking for, that's where the Thoreau was calling. I really wanted to be alone and with myself. I had not been alone with myself in a while, and since China maybe. And so I rented a 1-room cabin near the beach in Connecticut, and I spent like 5 weeks. And I didn't have a car. I just had a bike and a kayak. Those were my tools. And a library card. I started taking out some library books. And I had a sort of realization when I was in college, when I started, took the philosophy of physics or history and time. And I had also considered law school. Like, there's so many things. It's like not worth getting into all the different things that I tried and considered trying, but I took the LSATs. I was like gonna do law school for a while in there. After a hurricane like had me do a mini existential crisis, where I was out of power for like a month, and I moved. I didn't stay in my apartment, but it was like so much that I had tried. I thought about doing so many things, and I had never been able to really give one a chance. And I lost it. So many things. But yes, so I really narrowed it down to sort of two things that I was deeply considering when I was like 24, which was, there seems to be a lot of societal problems, and I could do something like go to law school and help society and do people stuff. Or I could go in science, and I could try to do research. And I didn't really, the research was not the word I was using. I didn't know that I wanted to do research. I had just this vague idea. This is sort of the vision that I had was, okay, we know only so much. There are certainly questions that are still being asked and all sorts of things. Why can't I be one of them? Like, why can't I just try to propel myself to the front of these people asking these questions, and then maybe I'll get to ask the questions someday. And so, but that felt audacious. That was like crazy talk that I could be at the forefront of, again, now what I call research, but at the time felt like wizards. Like they were magical people that did crazy things that I had no dreams of doing. So that felt, and I didn't have the background. I didn't do physics. I hadn't done the right technical training. And so I had tried law. I went the law direction first. And then honestly, if things had been slightly different time differently, this was 2014. This had been like 2016, might have been a better chance of doing the society thing. Obama was president. I was like feeling like things were like we were on the a post-liberal world. Everything was like going up. We were gonna just keep, my rights would just keep it expanding. Nothing was going to go backwards. We're talking in September of 2022. So, the rights are now coming back. Well, maybe we'll get to cosmology. There's a bouncing model here where we're retracting my universe is shrinking. And so that is, now I have a totally different perspective on why I might have gone into the society side of things. But at the time, it really was an intellectual curiosity of like, how fascinating is it to organize people, and how do we organize? What's the most effective way to organize? I was obsessed with that. That was my classics study, was government and societies. Like, how did people organize? And so I really structure, which then we get back to with the structure of the universe. But I really got into that sort of stuff, and but I didn't want to be a classicist. I get so excited. We have a peer here at Princeton that's doing this fascinating classics work about studying processions, like parades that would happen during particular rites of during the ancient Greeks. And it was this time where all the classes were involved. It wasn't this really class divided system, and she's studying how all these different classes would participate. And I love that. I was not creative enough to come up with something in classics that was so interesting. It felt like everything had been thought of. I had to be so narrow and specific in order to say anything new. And that's true in every field, but I couldn't wrap my head around a way to be creative in that space. And so it didn't feel like it was something I really had in me to do. So I never went that path. But the sort of what I learned about how societies organize governments was something that I was interested potentially in moving forward with. But I was digging tech. I thought that this was going to be a self-sustaining like model that I might get jaded. And actually, I haven't mentioned my parents yet, except I mentioned my dad. So I need to mention my mom, that she was really helping me. She knows me really well in a way you can't always see yourself. And so she was kind of warning me, I think you might get jaded going to law school. Like, I don't know that that's going to keep you really energized. And that wasn't the only advice that made me reconsider it, but it certainly was one of the things I thought about a lot. Is this sustainable? Am I going back to this when I was thinking about med school? Am I going to like every step of the process? And I wasn't sure. I thought there might be really tough times of being a lawyer where I would really get down. And so I thought, if I remove the people, if I go into something that is, just, it doesn't have any of that, I could never be disappointed. The universe is what it is. There's no, it felt safer in that way or something. And so I had always been excited about science. And now I felt like, okay, I got brave enough to quit my job. Can I convince myself to be brave enough to just try to do physics? Yeah. Just like try it. And so I took that month in the cabin where I started reading, like, of course, Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Space and Time, of Time. That got me so excited. how the chapters go, where they get like increasing complexity. So like every chapter starts with like, sort of, you can understand it, and then if you can like, make it to the end of the chapter, you're basically like a PhD in physics. It's so great, and so it's like a blast because you kind of get a little taste of everything. And I got to go back and read it now and see what new insights I have. But it was so cool, and that's where I started to get this image of like being on the forefront of research. And sort of the way I envisioned it is we're just humans in this cave, not quite Plato's cave, but maybe Plato's cave. There's no projections, but we all just have our little tiny, axes that we're just hitting away, and we're all going off in our own directions, trying to like broaden our understanding, trying to increase the space of our knowledge cave, and whatever. Why can't I just find a small space of trying to carve out new knowledge? It sounded so powerful and cool, that I thought, I just got to get brave enough to try it. And what was the real leap was that I had to go back and take the intro physics again. I had to go all the way back and start with 101, but this time with calculus. So I was like 25 going to freshman courses and living with my parents. Fortunately, my dad lived not too far from Philly, so I just commuted. It was a totally different college experience. Like I really had to put my ego aside and say, just do the work, just and see if you like it this time. Don't just do it and put your head down, but do the work and see if you like it. And I really quickly started doing research too, which is so important to get the idea of whether or not you like it. And I started working with Mark Devlin on the ballooning telescopes, and that was. But yeah, that's jumping ahead. It took me a long. My cabin time was the real like. What do I do when I'm so bored? What is it that I want that I want to think about when I don't have to do anything else? And if you can, it's like, again, going back to I have these physics models now of getting to the noise floor of your own life, reducing all the signals so you're just seeing the noise. What comes up? What signals are resonating with you? What do you notice about the world? What is it that you want to think about more when you have nothing that you have to think about? It's so powerful to reduce everything, and it's so hard to, because the world is so exciting and fun, and like saying goodbye to it for some time is like feels like awful, especially when you're a teenager or in college. Like you don't want to miss what your friends are doing, and just I had my fill of fun, and I had to just do nothing, just do absolutely nothing, and that was and I just wanted to think about how things worked and solve puzzles, try to find hard puzzles to solve, which my library card took out physics books, but also like calculus textbook. I was like, well, I'm going to have to relearn calculus. I should make sure I can know math. And that didn't go very far. I waited till I went back to school, but it was very like, I was taking out textbooks when I was bored to tears. So that seemed like I got to try this. That gave me the confidence. I don't know. So maybe I could have gotten into art or something. Like there's so many things that I could have latched onto, but because of this technology history that I had, I started really thinking about that this could work. I could actually do something in a space that I already have work experience that I know I liked. I liked trying to solve tech problems, and there's physics problems that feel like I could find some intersection here, and so like. The sales experience, completely unrelated, but it ends up being so valuable in terms of helping me decide what I ended up wanting to do. Like, the product's completely different, but there's so much in common that I got exposed to. That's been there's just universal. Anywhere you go, there's universal things about people, technology, organization that you can pick up and then take somewhere else, even if it seems unrelated. And that's really what I got from that sales experience. It was so wild, but great.
Yeah, I guess, it's good. You seem to like learn a lot from it, and it definitely put you on a better track.
Yeah. It was a good company. I feel lucky I landed there. So random. Sometimes you gotta just let random things happen and make the best of it, and that worked. But
But so in undergrad now, you went back to, I guess you have a degree, so you went back to U-Penn and you're doing physics courses. Yeah. And you talked about knowing sort of when to quit, when the answer isn't just buckling down and doing more. So in physics, at least in my experience, there have been moments when it's been very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, and how did you make that decision to keep going and buckle down and not quit physics quite
Yeah.
quickly?
Yeah. Well, I was good at it. That helped. This is the quit fast when you're bad at something, but starting at the very beginning, having to go back and take those first classes, which I'd already done, like it
Yeah,
was just the same but without calculus.
yeah.
I it was familiar, and so that helped me a lot. But that just helped me get over the like going back to school, because if I had gotten a C then, that would have been a very different
Yeah.
experience.
Okay.
But this time I started with a much better mindset and with a bunch of backup plans.
Okay.
I figured that my sister is a school teacher, and she did not like math growing up, and she went to college knowing she wanted to be an educator, and when she learned how to teach math, that is when she found a love in math. And so she now teaches middle school math. Well, actually now she teaches teachers how to teach middle school math, but she that was something I had in mind. I thought, I really like physics, and if I wasn't good at it, good enough to do research, maybe I could teach it. Maybe I would be into that. Because my whole experience with physics was in the classroom, and I certainly had a positive experience with it. So that was a big fallback plan, because I had already basically had the requirements to be a high school physics teacher. Like I didn't really have to do much else. I'd taken a few semesters of physics, so that to me didn't, maybe there was more, but it just, that was a sincerely a backup plan that made it easier. And I knew I could go back to sales, for example. Like if I went back to, I could go back to industry. Basically, I knew that if it didn't work out, there was still a lot that I liked about that job. I was just gonna do my damnedest to optimize, to get to like the best thing that I could be doing for me. But I knew that there were lots of things. That pie chart where I was in the middle, I knew there were lots of things that I could end up doing, and so I went in there with sort of the just blind willful ignorance. It doesn't matter how it works out. I won't know, and when it makes sense, it will make sense. I'll just have lots of backup plans, and that I didn't do in college. I did not have backup plans at all. That was a mistake. So, that, and then going on, it was hard, but it was a lot easier than it was the first time. I didn't have all the distractions of college. I was a grown up. I didn't have to also navigate having a roommate and maybe not sleeping well. Life was hard. Life is hard to figure out how to be an adult. And so I was really distracted in college, that then all I had to do now was study. That was like, and I had taken years away from it. And so I was eager, and the timing was right to get excited. And I wasn't perfect. Like there were hard times, but I was very encouraged. I had a very encouraging department that they knew that I was coming out of here. I didn't hide the fact that I'd come back to school, and people said, stick with it. Like, you're on the right track. People who are doing as well as you are now, continue on to do what you're talking about doing. So just stick with it. And that's, So even I had that network that I didn't always have. I was transparent about what my goals were, and with the people around me, and to them, people were remarkably nice, and people were helping me and giving me advice. And there were other people that did it. There was a girl that I wish I knew her name, but she did it like 6 or 7 years before I did it, and she went back to school, and I think she might have ended up in medical physics at the end of it. But yeah, it didn't feel like I was alone, and that was encouraging.
So speaking about, I feel like you want to talk about the research. I want to get into the research.
That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah, we're slowly edging there. So, like grad school. So, I guess, let's think about, you started doing research in undergrad. Sorry, not in undergrad. Well, I guess you.
Yeah, post-bac, but second undergrad. Right. My do-over.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how you decided to become a grad student and go into PhD. But before that, we should talk about the research that you started to do in this post-bac period. and maybe if you can include in there what it means to do research, because I know you have a good analogy for this. I think you talked about Plato's
Oh no, yeah, I
cave
did
for a
it.
bit.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, that's the
cool.
cave. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we can get back to it too.
but what does that
Yeah,
mean in terms of physics then? Yeah.
yeah, perfect. So, yeah, I had so we talked about how I started reading books when like Stephen Hawking, when I was in my cabin, my Walden summer, as I sometimes say. I started reading also modern physics books. I read a Lisa Randall Hidden Passages book about like something string theory that I don't understand, but it was great. It was so fun. Brian Greene's Elegant Universe. Just like these were books that really started to get me to think about how physicists thought. These were books by physicists. And so what how did they talk about their work? And so I read then I started watching documentaries too. That was really important because then you can see people, and you can see people that look like you or don't look like you, or you can start to understand like what it is to be one of these people. The text was good to start to open up my eyes, but now having like a person that could say this is what I do, and then what they do is study the early universe was like, whoa. So I saw this really amazing Nova documentary. Support local broadcasting. It's a PBS documentary about the bicep Keck telescope down in the South Pole, and they're looking for. So I didn't know anything about experimental cosmology. All the things that I just quoted are theorists. Those are theoretical physicists. So I didn't know anything about experimental cosmology or experimental physics. I knew, I left this out. So good. In 2014, I mentioned that article about the hyperloop. The Higgs boson was discovered or was announced that was huge. That was huge for me. The Higgs boson was like the most exciting thing to happen. I got jazzed. For a while, I thought I might do when I was starting to think about physics, I really thought about particle physics. That sounded so cool. And the Higgs being discovered when I was like thinking about quitting my job. I was like, yeah, I've been thinking about doing physics for at that point years. And I said, yeah, I got to do this. I got to do this. And so, right. So I didn't know what it meant to be an experimental cosmologist. I basically didn't know it existed. I knew that experimental particle physics existed, and that seemed pretty cool. But I was interested in cosmology.
Wait, what is cosmology?
Yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, this will describe it. When I was very existential, when my quarter life crisis at 24, I didn't have. I don't know what I would have said at the time, but probably would have said agnostic. Now just more or less atheist or whatever. But I didn't have a foundation for like what is anything, literally anything. I'd taken courses, but I didn't have any grand idea of what the universe, how it works. What is in control. A lot of people believe in a God or something like it in control. And that's comforting. That's a really comforting thought of what, that there's something really here. It's not just imaginary. There's something, so I was crazy existential, and like, I just didn't have, my family was religious. And so no one was asking the same questions that I was. And no one's super religious, but just enough that no one was asking like, is the Big Bang real? Like no one cared. And so I really got excited about the types of questions you can ask in cosmology, which are, what is anything? What is space? What is time? What is structure? How does structure evolve? I mean, cosmology is the story of the universe at its most basic form, not in this late universe. What is it doing right now? That's a part of it, but it's really trying to tell the story of how the universe where it came from, how it's evolving. Some people are very interested in where it's going. I think that's a little crazy audacious. I'm just a mere experimentalist. I don't predict, I just measure. But these are the types of things that I started understanding that you could ask. And that was insane for me to think about. Interstellar came out. That was a big one. I loved having another popularized. All of a sudden, everyone's talking about physics and gravity, how gravity works, and general relativity and time distortion, and that had me so really excited about thinking about big scale, the biggest scales in the universe. What's possible? What's even possible? Is a wormhole a thing? But again, I'm a mere experimentalist, so like so then I watched this documentary about this telescope down at the South Pole, and they're measuring this thing that I'd never heard of, which I'm sure Stephen Hawking mentioned in his book. I'm sure it's like everywhere in all those references. It had never crystallized for me, and the telescope is looking at this signature of the early universe called the cosmic microwave background, and it is a thermal relic from the early universe, and
Wait, thermo. Yeah, go ahead. Let me let you finish.
No, that's great. So I used to do I used to think about archaeology from a classics perspective, studying ancient societies, and it's a relic like an archaeological relic. Like it's the same sort of thing. It got frozen and it got buried, not by dirt, but by the universe. It has been frozen in, and then we have yeah, the dirt is the rest of the universe, but maybe I won't try to do a new metaphor live. But yeah, so it's a relic. It's this signature of the early universe, and it was predicted actually by people, some people at Princeton. Jim Peebles, Nobel laureate, was a really instrumental guy, who did a lot of the theory work that made physical predictions about this cosmic microwave background. And so basically the prediction was you start from, if you wouldn't mind, it should do the theory of the universe, like what we think the standard model of the universe is, the cosmic story.
Please. Yeah.
So I've been working on my thesis, my intro sections of my thesis. So here's my if you start with Einstein's relativity and you say, this is how the universe works, is Einstein, his relativity, which is a very simple equation, not the E equals mc squared one, but the equation that sets on the left-hand side of the equation, you have all the geometric information about the universe. What is the shape? What is the universe? What is it? Its shape, geometrically. The way Einstein defined it, and then on the right side of the equation is what's in this universe. What are the energy contents of this universe? Things like the matter that make us up, the light that we interact with, as well as the more exotic stuff like dark energy, dark matter. So that's the contents of the universe, and then you have the geometry of the universe. Although I guess dark energy is debatably geometric or energetic, but I digress. So you have this very simple equation, but it's very complicated at the same time. It's a simple setup, but there's zillions of equations. It's this matrix. It's tensor math. So it's so complicated that. But if you just make some really simple simplifications, if you just assume that the universe is the simplest it could be, which means that we're in no special place in the universe. Everywhere we look around, it's the same universe. We're not anywhere special. And that's this thing called the cosmological principle. And if you just use that principle and you apply it to Einstein's relativity, you start to make predictions about how the universe evolves. And you start to learn that if we live in a universe like what we think we do, it's expanding. The model is that we can have an expanding universe. And so then with that model, you can start to ask questions that make physical predictions, and then getting to the experiment parts, you can then build instruments that test these physical predictions. And so at the early dawn of time, based on what we think we know, the universe was dominated at some point by radiation. The universe was mostly a plasma with lots of photons bouncing around. And then as it expanded, it cooled. And eventually, the universe got so cold that it was no longer a plasma, but just a neutral gas. It was a gas. The photons left.
Oh, wait. When you said the universe cooled, do you remember what temperature it went from in this period?
To ask.
Oh.
It's
Just like order of magnitude.
Yeah. It's like thousands of Kelvin. It's like 6,000 Kelvin or something like that.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say that because the idea that the universe cools to 6,000 Kelvin is kind of
like
crazy.
right now the empty space is 3 Kelvin.
Yeah.
So if you just go out far away from a gravity space like or a well like we are on Earth, if you go out in space, 3 Kelvin, and that's mostly the cosmic microwave background. And then, but at one point, the universe was thousands of it's hotter than that too. But we don't know much before this cosmic microwave background, because at that time where the universe cooled to cold enough for neutral hydrogen to form, that is basically you have an image produced. You have photons just release, and they start traveling freely. They're no longer going to bounce into the plasma. They're just going to freely travel, freely propagate. And so that is what we see. And it was happening everywhere in the universe. And so we see this radiation coming from everywhere. And it is from about 400,000 years after what we refer to as the Big Bang, which is sort of, there's lots of models for what that actually means. But from, if we started from a single quantum, a single particle, or something. That is the timeline. Is that, and now we're at 13.8 billion past that time. So this is really, really, really old light. So it's archaeology at the cosmic level.
Yeah, and when you say light, you don't mean like visible spectrum light,
right?
Yeah.
Radiation. But we call it light because it's part of the same type of energy that visible light is. So visible light is just what our eyes rather, have bad at biology, have adjusted to. On Earth, there's the sun peaks at a particular frequency, things reflect, absorb water, has particular frequencies. So our eyes have evolved to work well on Earth, to notice things that are different, notice gradients of things on Earth. And of course, other types of species evolve differently. Bats use sonar, or you have infrared detection on reptiles and birds and such, right?
Oh, really?
So different creatures, different creatures have different wavelengths that they're sensitive to. Dogs can't see lots of the colors we can see. So there's we've all been evolved. Our species has evolved, and of course, not everyone has the full spectrum of color vision either. But we've evolved to see between 500 to 900 nanometers, about 400 to 900 nanometers, but that's a wavelength, and then the cosmic microwave background is millimeters. So it's on the same spectrum but far away, and it is close but not the same frequency. Well, it's similar frequency to microwaves that we use in our kitchen appliances. Those are another length microwave, but there's a broad spectrum. The cosmic microwave background emits the work I work on now, which we'll get to, but we measure at a lot of frequencies. So we're sort of got our red glasses, our green glasses, our blue glasses, and we just we measure with all of our different glasses on to see the different frequencies in the background signature of the universe. But yeah, exactly. It's light, but not the light that we can see. So we have to build these really, really sensitive detectors. Not actually, there's difficulty of detecting microwave in general. There's there's a rich engineering history of microwave antennas and sensing, but it's also very cold light. It's 3 Kelvin now, and it's faint. So you need your detectors to be very cold. If you have anything that's hotter than 3 Kelvin, you won't notice this extra signature. So you need really cold. I mean, that's not literally true, but that's sort of how you can think about it, because it's not gonna. What you need is a differential. You need a detector that can notice when you've changed, when there's a different a change to the power. And so if you have something that's hot and you have a really cold source that's applying on it, all the other warmer sources are going to you're not going to see the cold source. You're only going to see the hot sources. And so you need to design these really specialized instruments that filter out all of the light that's outside of the bands that you don't want to see, that gets rid of all of this visible light, gets rid of everything that could be heat, that power that you don't want to look at. And then you build these they're quantum sensors. There's quantum superconducting sensors that they can sense. Basically at photon precision. Like we're limited by the noise of the signature itself. The detectors are very, very low noise.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was that
powerful stuff.
precise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I learned, so we're measuring. So the microwave background is 2.75-ish Kelvin. And the temperature anisotropies, so like it looks like it's kind of bubbly, it's kind of got graininess to it, it's not a uniform single temperature. And those temperature
For anyone who doesn't know, just Google cosmic microwave background.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Google cosmic microwave background. Planck is a satellite telescope that has the most gorgeous, and WMAP, these are gorgeous instruments. So these bubbles that you'll see, those are the grains. There's the seeds of structure. Those are blown up quantum fluctuations from the early universe, and so it's a particular pattern that we can measure. And those the differences between the hot and cold regions on those maps is about 600 microkelvin. So we have to be sensitive at the microkelvin level. And yeah, so we operate our detectors at 100 millikelvin, so 0.1 above absolute zero. So we're like, things are real cold. Everything's barely moving.
Yeah. And what is you mentioned yesterday, the coldest place?
Lysander. Yeah, our Pierre Lysander.
What is that temperature?
It's like you're like past the point where temperature is even like relevant.
Okay.
It's ultra cold. So it's like, it's like nano Kelvin or something.
Okay.
Cold, nano Kelvin, but make colder. I don't know. You get to the point where it's like meaningless
it's like an
to talk about
entropy
temperature.
definition.
Yes, exactly. You start using entropy to describe it. Exactly. So, the coldest place in the universe. Princeton,
second coldest.
Second cold. No, you're right. Cambridge, Massachusetts is, and I don't know. There might be other labs, but
Okay, so how did this love and this idea of cosmology is what pushed you in this cosmology direction to do research and post-bac, right?
Yeah.
But then what made you decide to do a PhD in it?
Well, that was kind of always I wasn't going to go back for a post-bac. Like the plan was to do my PhD. Like I was going to go back and become a physicist. Because I thought that would combine sort of the right sort of STEM meets philosophy that I was interested in. I wanted to think about really interesting questions, and it felt like physicists were asking the types of questions I was interested in. So, that was always part of the plan, because you can do a lot with an undergrad in physics, but I already had an undergrad degree. So if I wanted to do something like an industry, I probably would have been better off just going into an industry, trying to get a job in a field that was like more aligned with what I might be interested in, which I did consider too. Like go work at a tech company that's building things like the Hyperloop. Try to find like infrastructure or hardware where they'll hire someone like me. So that was like that sort of wasn't my plan. I started with the idea of, so I was pre-doc really, from the beginning, pre-doctoral.
Okay. So then going into grad school, why do you pick Princeton?
Yeah. It's like it's the coolest place in the universe for CMB research. That's not true. There's so many cool places, but I was really excited about what was going on at Princeton. There are no less than 4 professors that work on that do experimental or an analysis of experiments for cosmic microwave background experiments, and that is that's a lot. As I'm sure we'll talk about, I'm going to be moving to Chicago imminently, and there are a lot of people there, a lot of CMB people there. CMB stands for cosmic microwave background, so there's a lot of I didn't consider Chicago as seriously back then. I was geography mattered when I was looking at my PhD. I was of the age where I had like family, friends getting married. everyone I knew in the universe seemed to live between Philadelphia and New York. And so Princeton was so perfect in that way, except I had fallen in love with cities, and Princeton is, as Lysander would say, is monastical. It is not. It is not urban. So that the research was really compelling. Really cool stuff was happening here, and then it kind of matched with my geography. And then since I've been here, I have a zillion more reasons why it was the right place. I really feel like this is a great community of physicists. Most of my friends are physicists, which I'm not sure if I should say that, it's a really good thing, but I love it. I really like the community here, and that's the trade-off of being at a monastery, is that then you and your fellow abbots are pretty close buds. So it'll be sad to leave, but it's probably being here for 5 years was great. It's great.
When you describe this amazing cosmology, start of the universe, cosmic microwave background, these things always sound so cool and inspiring, but often the day-to-day is very
wire
different.
bonding.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit about the day-to-day and how you feel? Do you think there's, I don't know, what's the difference between what does it mean to talk about physics research and physics versus to actually do physics research?
Yeah, there's nothing. They have nothing in common. My day-to-day life is different now than it was when I was a graduate student and a post-bac and all those things. So let me kind of walk through what it looked like at those different times. Because when I was an undergrad / post-bac, when I was doing physics undergrad work, I had two goals, two priorities, which were research and school. I just did those two things, and that worked and helped me get into a good graduate program. But as I've alluded to, I couldn't have done that my first time in college. So sometimes it makes sense to not do a post-bac after college, graduate knowing you like physics, study this, do some summer research. But if you need to get more research experience, a good way to do that is to just do another year, stay on your campus and without all the distractions and try to get more experience. So that's sort of I because I didn't have to I already had my degree. I just had to do the physics classes. It wasn't a full course load. It was most semesters were just 2 classes, and so I could do a lot of research. So that was that was really I was in lab at least 3 days a week, but it didn't matter. The bar was so low. I just picked up on some small projects. I built solar panels for that ill-fated BLAST telescope, and it was really easy. It was arts and crafts. I didn't need any previous experience. I just needed to be able to use a razor blade and spray glue. It was so simple. It was great. And I love arts and crafts. So I was into it. I was sold. Super boring, mundane, but this was cosmology. I didn't care. And so I trusted that sort of as I moved forward, I would get more control over what I would be doing, but I just sort of I didn't know what I would want to do day to day yet. So I just tried a bunch of things. And I do like arts and crafts. So some of my peers do no lab bench. They're never physically building things. They're always doing computation or programming in some way. So there's lots of different ways, but I quickly got into the physical building side of things. I like that. It is how my brain gets a positive feedback loop when I can look at something I've physically built. It's nice. So I've always really liked that about physics, and I just started doing that right away. But yeah, mundane. And then when I moved onto graduate school, it was a lot of the mundane stuff again. I wire bonding is something I've had to become passionate about, even though
You've
it's
had to become passionate.
it's like sewing. It's you're sewing your printed circuit boards together. It's arts and crafts again, but it's this giant machine that it's really tedious stuff. But yeah, it's definitely the idea that you have to do kind of the tough, tedious work to in experiment. I honestly don't know about theory as much, but in experiment, you sort of have to do the tough, tedious work because it takes a really long time to learn how to ask science questions anyway. It takes so long to, or even instrument questions. There's such a big learning curve that it's actually quite helpful to just have mundane tasks where you can you can read paper, you can try to study cosmology or learn new things, but then just day to day, you're doing something that you have to be focused so you don't break things, but it doesn't have to be like this crazy, and it's not simple, it's hard, but it still leaves space for like you to keep building your curiosity about science. And so I think having a research structure where that's allowed, working with your advisor, talking about your goals, it goes back to that thing of being transparent about what you want. Some people don't want to think about the science. Some people just want to go in, do the lab work, leave, hang out at night. Like, people are not interested in all the science stuff. And so it's important to talk about what you're interested in or what you might be interested in, with whoever dictates your schedule or has a say. And so that has helped. My advisor has tried to nourish that curiosity and keep me interested in the science questions while we're sitting there talking about 200 microns and like spending months talking about that's point that we're not in metric, people, Americans listening. That's 0.2 millimeters. That's a tenth of an inch. So it's like, we spend months talking about a tenth of an inch. It makes you want to go crazy. So it's like a reward that you get to think about cosmology. That's like the payoff. You get to think about it sometimes. And then eventually you hopefully you get to design these instruments. You get to think about that tenth of an inch early on in the project so that it doesn't come back to bite you and plague you for 10 months. So that's the sort of, you get more perspective. And I think then the tedium becomes different. Actually now, wire bonding, like I said, I had to become passionate about. And like, it's none of this, we couldn't see the early universe without wire bonding. So like, that's cool. That's important. And so I can convince myself of these things, and then that helps.
What do you think the hardest part about grad school was?
I think I think everybody in grad school gets to a point where either you're experiencing extreme self-doubt, extreme like insecurity about your future, or both. Like, self-doubt about what you're up to now and whether it's going anywhere, and then insecurity about whether you're going to be successful, and why you're working so hard. Where is this going? I really got into that, and we, in our third year, the pandemic hit. And so we had a very,
how did that affect your job as an experimentalist also?
Yeah, it was, wild. I couldn't go to lab for 3 months. Like, it was insane. I spent 10 hours a day in lab. Like, it was wild that I couldn't go in, and it was a huge gift, actually. It was a lot like me taking time away from, when I quit my job after sales. Like, it was really ended up being, I think, a perspective growing few months. I couldn't do my work. I had to stay home. And then also I was really frustrated that I couldn't do my work. And so I started really digging into cosmology, because that's I could do that. I could teach myself cosmology. And then I started trying to solve this like really chaotic problem that we couldn't solve. And I felt like a mad scientist. Like, I was going crazy trying to solve this problem. And, but I had never had the attention span to solve it, because I always had to do all these different things. And I finally got to sit down with this. Like, I imagine this is like what theorists do. It's like, I know this is solvable. Like, there's physics here. Like, this has to work. And so, like, how do I make it work? And that eventually, like, that happened in like May, and then lab reopened in June. So I like then when I went back, it was actually this like really annoying debugging thing. We had all our electrical circuits were just going haywire, and we had no idea why, and we couldn't track down the problem. And I spent these 3 months trying to track it down virtually with just data, and it was this puzzle like that I'd always craved. And then when we got back to lab, like the second day, we like put to work what I had like checked if I had figured it out, and it worked.
Wow.
And it was like the coolest thing that's ever happened. And I was like, okay, I really like this. Like, this is the feeling that I like.
Yeah.
And so that's that, like, those moments have kept me, even in like after months of just beating my head against the wall of like this, I have to figure this out. I have to figure this out. Eventually getting there gave me a lot of like then energy for the next phase of things. And it's sort of like that this is where experiment, it depends on the size of the project, the advisor, all these different variables. But you know, in any walk of life, it's like so nice to have these short-term, 3-month type goals that you can then say, yep, I did it. Whether it's a job application, whether it's a personal goal, like it's so that one was just like the first time I actually had this physics, like it worked. Something that I spent a really long time on. Wasn't just like, it wasn't the linear, like if I'm just working harder, it's getting better. I was getting nowhere. Eureka, we finally figured it out. Yeah. And that's a blast. That's like what the whole research thing is about. It's so getting into the cave and finding, okay, where do I latch onto? The cave, we're rock climbers, okay? So we've got our belays on, we're like latched in, and we've got little headlamps and an axe, and we can only shine our light in so many directions. You can't like try everything. Yeah. You latch yourself somewhere, get your axe out, and just don't drill a hole just that only you can see. You got to like keep connecting it to the people's holes around you, so you can actually, make sure that you're actually increasing knowledge and not just your own, not just going down rabbit holes. So that's sort of, I imagine that there's a whole team of us. We're in this cave together, and we're giving each other thumbs up and trying to find places where our knowledge holes can meet. That's what I think about it, because we're on the backs of all the people who have done it, all the people who have started building this hole, and now we're living in the space that they created, right? Like we're living in that clarity, that knowledge, that
so. When you talked about on the second day figuring it out, it reminds me, one of our friends recently, what's the craziest thing you've seen in grad school? And they said, when my idea worked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My experiment worked. That's the biggest surprise.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm still surprised.
So talking more about physics in grad school and at Princeton, I wanted to know if you had any comments about what it was like being a woman in physics or in Princeton physics. In that space of topics.
I have a very unique perspective of this, because I'm a woman in physics that has the ratio of on average in academia is like 75% men, 25% women or something. But my lab is the exact inversion of that. We're 75% women. And so I sort of have like two views of it. And I don't know, there's a lot of sort of cheeky things I could say about the good and bad of it. I mean, I like to focus on the upsides of it, because I think that there's a lot of challenges that get talked about, but we get one additional free lunch a month. So that's big. that's big for us. No, it's kind of this weird thing. I've always had it happened in tech too. There's sort of like the women in tech that of the company I used to work for. And it's sort of this weird thing of like, it's an interest group, but like it's just our biology. Like what's the but instead of dwelling on that and worrying about it, I like to focus on that it is this extra window into physics that you get, into whatever community you're part of that you get, that if the women are organizing and they're going to sit down and have an extra lunch every month, then okay, that's cool, because that's with usually it's an invited professor gets to sit with us. So now we get like this close-in access. It's like, VIP room access to these people, and we have something in common. And it's like kind of weird, because again, like I sort of go back and forth on how much we should be like gendering things versus like not gendering things. But I'm it's a fact of life right now. So I'll like, wallow in it. But yeah, of course, then representation matters. That's a really big thing for me, in like all walks of life. And so being in, having a women's team, like the team is mostly women, and is helpful for me. Like I think that makes a big difference. I don't have to do any translation of like what it's going to look like when I do that. I just look around and it's like, oh, it looks just like me. But I think we're better than that. I think we can do the translation. And so, I'd love to make it such that, it doesn't matter if you're male or female in physics, but we're not there. It's not until we get, equity, until we get 50-50, like you got to have this extra stuff. That's towards equity. So, it's like I said, I'm sort of sheltered from it because I mostly work with women, and that's amazing. And the women perspective in physics was like gone for ages. Like these are the sorts of things that I think about of like, we didn't have any women like asking these questions for a zillion years, and not that it's definitely going to be a different set of conclusions or directions, but certainly feels like crazy that we've gotten rid of half the population. We just rolled them out. And of course there have been incredible female cosmologists over the years, especially like pre-war, but then astrophysicists. There's been lots of female astrophysicists, so there's like history, but it's I think that it really matters that we just keep making sure we get as many women, get 50-50 in these spaces until we're there, and then we can remove gender or something, right? Once we get there, that there's some more equity, we can stop having these special lunches. But men are always welcome at those. Allies are helpful. One more thing I think it's important to say on that is women cannot solve their own problems. I do not like the attitude of like that's a woman's problem. It doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a woman's problem. There are only human problems. And so if you're a man in the position of power and there is a women's lunch, go sometimes. Be there. Don't that's not, women shouldn't, we all need to work together to solve community problems, and that's how I see sort of the inequalities of physics, which women is a big one, and then of course socioeconomic background is huge, is like the biggest thing. We talked about my high school at the beginning, and that made a big difference for me eventually doing physics. So physics has a lot of work to do to bring more people in. Okay, we've had, the women's perspective has sort of been around in physics. What about like the people who didn't have tons of extra income? Where are those people? I had to, it costs a lot of money to go to school and then go back. Like, I'm so lucky that I had all the privilege that I got to do that and follow my passion. And I want there to be so many more programs that help someone like me. I looked for bridge programs and that sort of thing. And we need so many of those for physics. We need lots of bridge programs for people like me who figure it out later. Sometimes it takes a while.
What would you say to any woman potential woman in physics? Do you have any advice for them?
Just women in general?
Yeah, maybe.
Such a broad group.
Yeah. In STEM, when they look ahead and don't see as many people like them, or see all the difficulties that women have to face.
Don't let it be your burden. If someone's got a problem with women, that's their problem. Don't let it be your burden. Try to find a way. I mean, that's impossible. It's terrible advice. Like, that's like saying don't get depressed. Like, you can't like control those sorts of things, but do your best to remember it's not your burden, even when it feels like it is. It's not your burden. And find women who are struggling, like in all things. Find people who have the same problems you have. Maybe they're a little further along in solving their problems. But giving problems need community. You need other people to help. So that's, yeah. If you are a woman in physics and you're facing problems that are common of women in physics, then remember it's not your fault. So go talk to women who have made it in physics. Find a professor in your department or an adjacent department if there isn't one, because I'm sure there are still physics departments that don't have a single female faculty. Go find one in engineering, and try that's it's a network. That's the upside. It's a network. People want to get to equity, and we want 50-50. So yeah, find people.
Okay, so closing off grad school, moving forward, what's your next step?
I am going to keep doing early universe science. I'm going to keep studying cosmology, and for now, still from the experimental side. So I accepted a position at the University of Chicago that will be at the Kavli Institute of Cosmological Physics, which I love saying because it's a cosmology center. I'm so excited to be at any talk that's happening. I'll just pop in. I'm so excited to be at this really focused institution. So, but I'll be working on the same experiment that I work on now, which I obviously have to say, which is Simons Observatory, a CMB probe, a suite of CMB probes. There's going to be at least 4 telescopes, and we're putting tens of thousands of detectors. So if anyone did do the thing that Brad suggested, or here's your second chance, go look up CMB, Cosmic Microwave Background. Go look at the map of it, and so those maps, the best maps that you're seeing, that's a full sky map. Those are done with 50 detectors, 50. We're building instruments that in total will have about 60,000.
Oh my
and
God.
And so the depth of
I
the
had
maps,
no idea.
It's insanity. I mean, people have put thousands of detectors, so like the maps have improved since those full sky maps.
Yeah.
We all the stuff's done from the ground now, so we don't have as beautiful full sky maps. We're obstructed by Earth. Always gets in the way of our observation. And so we have a smaller sky patch, but they're really deep. So right now the maps that you'll most commonly see are done with 50 detectors. The state of the art is like a couple thousand, and now this instrument that I work on now is going to be deploying upwards of 60,000. So that's what I'll be working on, and I do it now. I'll just be, instead of doing the detectors, which is why I know a lot about them, I'll be doing more of the optical systems and getting one of the telescopes deployment ready. So the way things work is you do all your calibrations, testing up in North America. Make sure you think you know how your instrument works, and then you go down and do the real the final calibrations and start observing. So we still have a couple years before the instrument I'll be working on is doing that. But Simons Observatory, some of the telescopes they're getting packaged up now, so we should start getting some sky observations next year. But we've been saying that for a while, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. The pandemic slowed us down, so
yeah. So this is this like taking a picture with higher resolution now? Is that the idea?
So we're taking a bunch of different types of photos, basically.
Okay.
So we're scanning. So we're getting like photos on photos on photos, and then overlaying all of those scans. So we get super high statistics on all different sky patches, which we need to overcome the atmosphere, which is a big noise source since we're observing from Earth. And so we're scanning, we're making these deep maps, but we're observing, like I said, with all of our different color glasses on. So we're looking at all these different frequencies. And so if you imagine, for those people who might have a little bit more of a science background at this point, if you imagine a black body spectrum where you're looking at a frequency, what are the different colors versus how intense are each of the different colors. So if you have if we're mapping the black body out and you have like your frequency versus intensity, we're looking at like different points on this curve. We're going to look at the peak at 100 gigahertz, and we're going to go kind of far away at 300 gigahertz and kind of far away at 30 gigahertz. So we're going to map out all of this, the spectrum of the frequencies that we're seeing, because different sources have different spectra. So whether it's a synchrotron radiation, galactic dust radiates, and so we have all these other types of signals that we want to be able to cancel out. So we look at different frequencies, then we can map out the spectrum and then remove sources that are not the science target, not something like the CMB, or people will do galactic and extragalactic science with these maps as well. So some people, that is the signal. But for the types of stuff we've been talking about, that's just noise. And so you can remove all that by looking at all these different frequencies. So those are the different colors that we look at. So that's one big part of it. And then the other big thing is that we're looking at polarization. And so light radiation has it's very simple. Elementary particle, photons are elementary particles. They only have a few parameters, and one of them is polarization. And it basically, a photon is a light wave, is an oscillating electromagnetic field. It is just this little vibration in the electromagnetic field, and so that, because electricity, magnetism, they have directions to them. They are vector quantities that they care about which way they're facing. They behave differently in different directions. That little vibration has a direction, and that's called polarization. So when you put on sunglasses that are polarized, it's removing half of the polarization. You have things are polarized. Light is polarized, and sun, for example, is randomly polarized. So by where you remove one type of polarization, you get rid of half of it, and so that's sort of the way that we might interact with polarization on a day-to-day basis. But in a cosmic sense, polarization has a different history than the temperature anisotropies, the temperature bubbles that I was describing. The temperature bubbles can be sourced by quantum fluctuations that are just temperature or density fluctuations. So the early universe, just matter just popping in and out of existence, and so that is a particular, and that will source these temperature anisotropies. The polarization can have a different cosmic history. There's a particular signature of polarization, a divergence, the divergence-less part of the polarization can only be sourced, the theory goes, by primordial gravity waves. And I should have stopped. Primordial gravity waves.
Yeah. So that's
metal stuff.
That's different from the gravity waves that we detected in black hole mergers.
They're much bigger. They're
Okay.
huge.
Okay.
The theory is that they're giant. So we just had Lyman Page, extraordinary cosmologist.
You'll be on this
Princeton.
podcast at some point.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My colleague, wow, a colleague,
Yeah.
if you said that. He gave a talk yesterday. He was relating it to the LIGO. So you should ask him this question. Edit this, cut me, and then no. But he described it as the, hopefully I get close to the order of magnitude right. The disturbance that LIGO has published is on order like 10 to the minus 21 or something, and this is like 10 to the minus 1 or maybe 10 to the minus like 4, but it's like it's at least a dozen, maybe more magnitude, bigger gravity wave. But it's an indirect detection. We don't actually measure the gravity wave like LIGO. We don't have like a spatial measure of it. The tensor, the pattern that a gravity wave would make in the temperature of the primordial gravity or quantum field, where everything is evolving, the quantum foam that's the origins of everything. Those weird patterns that are sourced by gravity waves don't have another cosmic history, and so there's no other explanation for having this divergence-free polarization, often called B modes. There's no other explanation for this B modes, except primordial B modes, except from the early universe, from gravity waves, big, powerful gravity waves that are that connects to a theory that is very popular in my field, which is inflation. And I don't work in inflation, and I shouldn't comment on it. But yeah, that the B modes is thought to be a signature of inflation. And so that's what a lot of the measurement is trying to get to, this polarization signal, that the instruments, polarization is really hard to measure. It's really hard to get good measurements of polarization. And so that's a big goal of Simons Observatory, is to make polarization maps of the CMB with all of that foreground removal, getting rid of the dusty galaxy that also emits B modes. It's really, really hard to remove all of that. So it's ambitious, and it's about half of the budget of cosmology right now. Half of the CMB budget is going towards finding these polarization signatures. So it's a really big priority for the community. I happen to work on other stuff.
Yeah. Wow. That was interesting. I didn't know I mean, I've heard about B modes and things like that before, but I think you actually described it in a way that I was like, is this B modes? And then you're like, these are B modes. I was like, whoa. So yeah, I feel like it was a nice, for me, it explained B modes in a different way. So that was
Yeah,
nice.
it's good we didn't talk 3 months ago before I
Yeah.
wrote my intro. It's gotten a lot better.
Okay. So why did you decide to do a postdoc after grad school? Because at this point in time, many grad students sort of reevaluate their career, and you decided to continue in academia and science and cosmology and your sim experiment. So what was the thought process that led you to this?
Yeah. It was definitely a thought process. It was not, I didn't arrive at that decision quickly. And it's important to evaluate, everything before it's a juncture, and you should always take advantage of those junctures that give you a chance to reevaluate and try new things. And it looks like I'm doing nothing new, right? Like I'm not doing any different things. So why? I do want to try new things. So that's my upcoming postdoc will do new things. So that's important. That was a criteria. I work, like I said, detectors and readout now. And these instruments, they're gigantic. They're like hundreds of $1 million instruments, hundreds of scientists. They're so big. And I feel like I'm just barely getting my head around how it works. And I've really liked the detectors and readout side of things, but I'm not done. I want to keep learning about the instruments sort of end to end, which we'll see where that goes. But that's sort of why I'm sticking with the same sorts of experiment, because I'm actually moving systems. I'm going to go to optics, and that feels crazy different to me. People looking in, that looks like a very small move, but it's all different tools. I mean, it's just a completely different set of skills. Like then I'll be using different types of modeling softwares. I'll be building different scale things. Like it's just so many solving problems in a really different way. And I have no idea how. I tried to describe how I think electromagnetic vibrations propagate, but I barely know. Polarization, I still have a lot of work to do. So I have still a lot of personal questions about how things work and how the instrument works, basically, that I want to get answered. And then the project, as I've been hopefully trying to hopefully demonstrate, I'm super interested in. I think that the mission of trying to measure the cosmic microwave background is really really cool. We didn't really talk about what science you can do with it, but that's okay. Things. And then, so in terms of just choosing to do the postdoc, though, I mean, with a physics PhD, there's lots of things you can do. People go into so many different fields, and having the perspective of having been in industry helped me contextualize what these different types of companies would look like. Even though I was in an advertising technology company, Google, like everybody else in technology, was our biggest competitor. And so I spent time in those offices and sort of knew a lot about what a tech company, a big tech company would look like working there, and not like being on an engineering team, but I sort of I thought I could guess. And so I had that experience was really key. Like, we're not talking about your background, because you told me that this was only a one-way conversation, but you have done some internships while you've been a graduate student, and I bet that's given you this type of perspective that just working out in the quote-unquote real world helps you get, zooming out of academia, which is so specific and a very just a very particular subset of society. And so I think really doing the exercise of exploring leaving is so important, because you can get it. Postdoc jobs are competitive, but there's always research to be done, and postdocs are kind of cheap labor. So if an experiment finds out that you're available and you're decent, there's probably a job out there for you, even if it's not one of the fancy postdoc fellowships. And if you want to do physics, if that is something that keeps you coming to work every day, then it doesn't matter what postdoc you do. But if you're debating whether or not you want to do it, it's so valuable to try other things first. It is a big commitment, and it is a good opportunity to try new things. And you can always come back to postdoc. It's not like a one-way street. You can always come back to academia after taking time. So I've been fortunate. Like we talked about the pandemic, I got a little break too. I've had my periods of exploration where I really think deeply about where I might want to be going, and so that just has to happen at some point. And graduating is a good excuse to have those conversations with yourself.
Yeah. Totally.
It forces you to do it. You
Yeah.
can't avoid it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there any sort of general beliefs, habits, or behaviors that you live by that you think you would attribute your success to?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with beliefs. I think because I think it sort of it summarizes a lot of the stuff we've been talking about with sort of trying new things and evaluating how well you're doing and how much you like those things. And so I think that my belief system, the way I organize my life now, is just asking myself constantly, is this what I want to be doing now? Is this what I want to be doing in the future? Looking at both marshmallows and trying to assess figuring out what's worth the long-term payoffs and what's not. I see a lot of my colleagues here at Princeton, which requires good grades and usually doing everything right and by the book. Those are the types of people that often make it, especially in STEM, where there's not as much even like study abroad and such. Like people are just more on the one track, like lab rat or just bookworm computer on your computer all the time. So there's just that track, and it's so important to get off it. And so I think that my sort of belief, my philosophy of how I organize myself is just constantly having a relationship with that. Is thinking about, is this something that is going to pay off in the long run? Is it worth like this pain now? Or should I be prioritizing things that are also going to bring me joy? And as you keep balancing those two things of, is this going to pay off in a reasonable amount of time? Or should I just find something that I'm going to enjoy more? Because this is going to take a while. It's going to take years, right? Am I going to enjoy this for years? Nope. Okay, let's find something I can enjoy for years. And like playing that game of just staying tethered to liking your day to day makes it, you create a feedback loop for yourself that then makes it easier to like your job and your life. That is that I and yeah, there's lots of other things that can play a role in that, but and I think, if people are listening to a podcast like this, you're already doing the right things. You're already like on the right track. And so like, it's okay to skip steps or like leave and then come back. And it doesn't have to be rigid. Like my belief system is that you should find what you like doing whenever you find out what that is. And you should not keep doing things past when you have to. And, you should also be careful when you start having a family and such, because then that limits things, right? But other than that, this country and lots of countries around the world make it easy to design your career. You can actually design your career, and but a lot of people don't do it. They stay on the thing that they thought they were supposed to do. So
there's actually a course at Stanford called Designing Your Career. Oh, actually, there's a book based on a course from Stanford called Designing Your Career. So I don't want to.
I should read that book.
Yeah. It looks like you can write it.
No. Podcast is the right level.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much for taking the time to tell us your story and give us some advice and some things to think about.
I'm sorry, it's like such a lot, and you're gonna have to edit a lot, but
yeah.
just cut out. I don't know anything.